Hey, CircleYouth, thanks for being here with us again. Man, you guys are my favorite part of the week. Now, you might have heard some little news, a little bit of a surprise coming our way in March. And, well, I wanted you to be the very first to hear it. That's right here and right now. On Thursday, March 25th, Derek Moncrief, he wants to do an Instagram Live with you. Derek played for the Rough Riders for 3 years and was selected as an All-Star in 2019. He went on to sign in the NFL with the San Diego Chargers in 2020, and he recently signed a futures contract with the Los Angeles Rams just this past January. Derek is an awesome guy, and we had a chance to have a Zoom call a few weeks ago, and I got to hear some of his story, and I'm just gonna say that you'll wanna be there on Instagram Thursday, March 25th. We'll give you more information in the next couple of weeks, but that is something that I am so excited for. We'll also be doing some giveaways, so you might just win some apparel from Derek's foundation. So stay tuned to our social media for more information coming your way. Well, this is our final week of Free People, but we're talking about rules and freedom. To wrap up this series, I have a very important question to ask you. Very important. What's the last movie you watched? Now, in the movie that you watched, was there some kind of conflict between the characters? What was the conflict? And what caused it? Go ahead, discuss in your groups, and we'll be right back. Every day, countless rules guide our lives. There are obvious ones like school rules, right? No running in the hallways. There are house rules, be home before curfew. And there are laws like, don't kill anybody. But our lives are also dictated by rules we don't always think about, like laws of nature, gravity, right? Cause and effect, the passing of time. There are social norms like don't be a jerk, don't point or stare, hold the door for the person behind you. And there are moral rules. Do what's right, don't lie, cheat, betray, mock, or be cruel to others. In real life and in the movies, there are consequences for breaking rules. Breaking a law might lead to punishment. Trying to break a law of nature like gravity will probably lead to injury. And breaking rules that negatively impact others will often result in conflict. Have you ever had a conflict with someone in authority? Maybe they gave you a curfew that you thought was too early. You were laughing with your friend in class or practice when you were supposed to be paying attention. Maybe your youth leader called you out and you didn't like it. Have you ever had a conflict with a friend? Maybe one of you was jealous. Maybe someone said something hurtful. Or maybe it was just a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. Have you been in a conflict with someone even this week, today? Are you in a conflict with someone right now? Maybe even someone in this room. Conflict is an unavoidable part of life. It is, which is why we need to talk about it. We need to know what to do when we're angry with someone because they hurt us. And we need to know what to do when someone is upset with us because of how we've hurt them. Now, if you've been here for the last few weeks, you know that we've been talking a lot about God's law. Now, today we're going to see how breaking God's law leads to conflict with each other. But you see, God's law doesn't mean laws like don't eat shrimp or don't wear clothes that are made of 2 different kinds of fabrics. And by the way, those are real laws in the Bible. But when we talk about God's law, we're talking about one single commandment from Jesus. Or maybe is it 2? I'll let the people at the Bible Project explain.
Question for you.
Okay, yeah.
How many laws is the Great Command? Good question.
Yeah, Jesus said the great command is love the Lord your God. And the second great command is like it.
So there's 2 great commands.
Well, actually, he only says there's one. Jesus says there's one great command, but then he gives 2. Love God and love your neighbor.
So So is Jesus just bad at math?
Yeah, I think in Jesus' mind, you love God by loving your neighbor. And when you love your neighbor, you're loving God because you're loving people made in God's image.
That's an extra nugget. It's not even in the video.
We don't even talk about that in the video. That one's for free.
Now, whether you think of this as one command or two, we've been talking about how to view rules, freedom, and authority with Jesus' law of love in mind. Now, according to Jesus, as long as we're following this rule, we're following all of the rules that really matter. So when we find ourselves in conflict with someone else, I wonder how often it's because someone has broken Jesus' law of love. Now, this might sound strange for some of you to hear, especially at church, but you are free to do whatever you'd like. You are. You know, are you free to be selfish? Yes. Are you free to speak badly about others? Yeah, absolutely. Are you free to be judgmental? Yes. Are you free to be bitter, arrogant, cruel, resentful, impatient, unkind, or rude? Yes, 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 and yes. Nothing you do will change God's love for you, but if you did these things, would you be fulfilling Jesus' law of love? And the answer to that is no. We might think freedom means doing whatever you want, whenever we want, with whoever we want. But can you imagine the consequences? If you lived your life entirely for yourself, do you think that you'd be happy? Do you think you'd be fulfilled? Do you think you'd have a meaningful relationship with others? I don't think so. So what's the alternative to this me-centered thinking? How do we avoid unnecessary conflict with others? And how do we resolve conflicts when they do happen? And how do we do all of this according to Jesus' law of love? Now, maybe the best thing we can do is to look to the one who gave us the law of love, because it's not just Jesus' words that teach us how to love. It's his actions as well. You see, Jesus was God, which meant he really didn't have, he really did have the freedom to do whatever he wanted. This whole universe is his, along with everything and everyone in it. He has the power to do anything he wants to do at any given time. But what did he do? He gave up his life. Jesus chose to give up his freedom in two ways, right? Although he was God, he chose to humble himself by inhabiting a human body here on earth. And he chose to give up his own life, submitting to torture and to death. And why did he do it? Because he loves us, and he wanted you to be free. Through his life, his death, and resurrection, Jesus gave us freedom we could never have found on our own. Freedom from sin and condemnation forever. Freedom to live a full and abundant life right now. You see, Jesus really gave up his freedom in order to love you and to love me. And then he told us to do the same for each other. And that's the ironic thing about freedom, right? Free people give up their freedoms for others. Not because they have to, but because they choose to live in love. You see, true freedom is found when you love God and when you love others first. You're free to be in charge of your own life and to live it without Jesus, but you'll find greater freedom when you let him lead you. You know, you're free to make yourself the center of your own universe at the expense of your relationships with others, but you'll find greater freedom when you give up some of your freedoms in order to love others well. You see, when you give up some of your freedoms in order to love God and others, you'll discover a more fulfilling kind of life. Your relationships are going to deepen. You'll grow in kindness and in patience and in forgiveness, compassion and grace. You'll grow closer to your Creator. Now, right now, I want you to think of someone you currently have conflict with, or someone who you often have conflict with. Do you have a name in mind? Well, great. What I want you to do is write their name inside the cage on your handout as a reminder that there's something about your relationship with them that's holding you both back from freedom. And maybe it's a hurt or offense that needs to be forgiven. Maybe it's your attitude. Maybe it's your me-centered thinking. And even if you're sure they're the problem in your relationship, your actions are either adding to or helping to solve the conflict. And what I want you to do, and you can discuss in your group if you're comfortable with it, how have you been putting yourself first? Now be honest. When it comes to the person you've been in conflict with, how have you put yourself first? Have you said hurtful things because it made you feel better? Have you ignored them? Have you mocked or talked badly about them, lied about them? Have you been stubborn, difficult, dramatic like myself, rude or defiant? Sure, you're free to act this way. But here's the thing, it's harming your relationship with this person, and it's keeping you from following Jesus' law of love. So what can you do differently? How can you give up some of your freedoms, like the freedom to say or do whatever you want, in order to love them like Jesus loved you? How can you sacrifice for them? Keep in mind, putting others first doesn't mean you stop taking care of yourself. You'd be pretty unhealthy if you did that. Jesus isn't calling us to make so many sacrifices for others that we become unhealthy, but I'm guessing there are some sacrifices you can make for others that would help you move away from this me-centered thinking and start living with more love. Just like Jesus gave up his freedoms in order to love you, there's something that you can do to sacrificially love someone else, especially someone that you're fighting with. Free people give up their freedoms for others, not because they have to, but because they choose to in love.